for the Cholim of Klal Yisrael. So this is relating to an oven now. Opening an oven on Shabbat. If one knows for certain that there are still coals smoldering in an oven, a Jew may not open it. If it is certain that there are coals smoldering inside the oven, one may break open the seal of the oven on Shabbos to remove the food. However, the Ramah writes that the prevalent custom is that to have a non-Jew or child open the oven. If no other option is available, even a Jew may open the oven in a slightly unusual manner, which is called a shinoi. So in the old days, they had these ovens. They put coal into like an enclosed area, I think it's probably like the pizza ovens the pizza ovens you have today. That's just probably what they had in the old days as ovens. So we'll do the next part tomorrow night. So that's right, opening.
We're under a bit of time pressure here because we got
exactly. That's it. That's it.
All right. All right, guys. We ended off yesterday where the rabbi's view is that if within the same utterance on the same day, witnesses testified that this person stole the animal on the Sunday and then slaughtered the animal on the Monday, but their testimony was on a Wednesday only, and they were proven Adim Zomimim because Thursday's witnesses said that these witnesses couldn't have viewed the slaughter on the Monday because they were with them. So in that particular case, because it's one utterance, it's seen as one testimony, and therefore even the theft part is thrown out. Okay? So that's according to Rav Yossi. As far as the rabbis are concerned, it's still two separate testimonies. So in other words, they've proven Adim Zomimim on the slaughter, but not the theft, and that testimony is not thrown out. And the thief, unless he's proved otherwise, pays double, and the Adim Zomimim pay the threefold. So what was the reason? That reason is that basically Rav Yossi holds that one statement made after another. Kabb, are you with me, bud?
I am.
Okay. So Rav Yossi holds that one statement made after another within the time required for an utterance is viewed as part of the same utterance. What does that actually mean? Is that accordingly both statements are considered one testimony, and since they are disqualified retroactively from this time they testified about the slaughter, they're considered to having been disqualified at the time they testified about the theft as well. Okay, because it's part of one testimony. It's different if a single set of witnesses, according to Rav Yossi, testify on the one day about the theft and on another day about the slaughter in two different testimonies. Not that the event took place in 2 days, but their testimony took place in 2 days. So the Gemara has got a bit of a problem with this. And the reason being, Kevin, is that they're saying Rav Yossi, does he actually hold that a statement made after another statement within the time required for an utterance is viewed as part of the same utterance? In other words, the same testimony. So we're finding a contradictory Mishnah that seems to say not. In other words, in our case for theft and slaughter, he sees it as one testimony. But in another part of Shas, he doesn't, even though it's within the same time period within an utterance. So what's that other case? So if you have a look in Tamura 25b. Now Tamura, guys, mustn't be confused with Truma. Truma is given to the Kohen. Tamura actually means substitution. It's laws about substitution. So in the 25th daf, 25b, the Mishnah deals with the subject of Tamura, and this substitution comes from the verse in Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 27, verse 10. And it forbids substituting for a sacrificial offering. In other words, if you designated another animal to take place of an animal sanctified as a sacrifice, The Torah further stipulates that one does declare a substitute for the offering. Both animals are sanctified. The original one retains its sanctity, and the substitute, which is the Tamura, requires the same designation as the original. So apparently there's no such concept of substitution. There's only a concept of an addition. I'd call it an addition, not a substitution. Because, so that's not a question. The Gemara has a different question. Kev, are you okay? You've been looking at the screen the whole day. Is that why you're looking up? You're needing a bit of eye space difference. All right, as long as you're understanding it, that's fine. But the case in that Gemara on Tamura isn't where you have another animal that's trying to substitute another, because then you can't substitute. You have to sanctify both animals. You know, in other words, if you set aside an unsanctified lamb and said, this lamb is hereby designated a substitute for the Olah offering in my possession, obviously then both animals are considered Olos, okay? But the Mishnah here deals with a specific case of a person who placed an unconsecrated animal with an Olah, and the other one was a Shalim offering, or Shalamim offering, and declared the formula that the Mishnah now presents. So again, Kevin, what are we dealing with here? After you with me, just wave. Is that, do you understand anything we've done now, up to now? Your head hasn't been in it. No, your head, okay. So all we're saying is here, there's no such thing as a substitution. If you want another animal in its place, you have to then sacrifice both animals. But then there's a accorded sanctity according to your designation of what you sanctified it. If you wanted, if the one was an Olah, the other one becomes an Olah. Now we've got a third animal that goes into the pile that's absolutely unsanctified. What do we do? Because the one animal, the sheep, for example, was for an Olah offering, and the other sheep with a different sort of look was for the Shalamim offering. Shlamim offering, okay? Which means, what do you do with this undesignated animal? Which category does it go into?
Sorry, Damon, just go 2 steps back. So there are two, at that there's a Shlamim and simultaneously. That's been designated.
Yes, that's been designated. There's no issue as far as that's concerned. It's when another animal wanders in the pen with the two other animals, and now you kind of have to sanctify it as well. But what do we use it as? Do we use it as an Olah offering or a Shlamam? This thing is Shlamim offering. In other words, what category do we give it? So what we have to do here is we actually have to have a formula of how to deal with it. And this is the Mishnah at which Rabbi Yossi has a different view with regards to an utterance. So let's learn this Mishnah. If one declares this animal, the one that's unsanctified or unconsecrated, is hereby designated...
5:30 p.m.
Oh, Jesus. Gavin, you've got to do something about that before the shit actually throws me off. All right. Take 100. All right. Okay.
Sorry, I should have.
I know you've got a lot on the plate. Sorry, mate. It's just, it throws me off. All right, no problem. Let's get back to it.
I'll try to remember. Thanks.
Okay. So, all right. So look, in our Mishnah, Tamura 25b, if one declares this animal is hereby designated a substitute for an Olah offering, a substitute for a Shlamim offering, it is a substitute for an Olah offering only. So again, we're talking about, Kevin, a case here where an unconsecrated animal wanders in the pen, where one of the animals is designated as an Olah, the other one is Shlamim offering, okay? Now, we don't know what to do with that third animal. So the owner has to declare, does it go as an Olah offering or Shlamim offering? Okay? We don't know, so we ask him. Okay, which one do you want? Which one is this a substitute for? Now, we're saying that basically, if in the statement, it's a substitute for an olah offering. And then a second later it says, Kev, you're looking at your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking down.
Are you okay?
I'm fine.
So what, as long as you're feeling all right, mate. All right.
No, I'm fine. I'm just looking down.
Okay, so what we're saying is here is that they ask him, they say to him, listen, what do you want to do with this animal? So he says very, very clearly, listen, I want to make it an olah offering. No, I want to make it shlamim offering. Now we don't know what to do. So according to Rabbi Meir, whatever his first statement was in terms of an utterance, that's what happens. Yeah, sure. Ask me a question.
Then there's going to be if they either make it a shlamim or what's the other one? Ola. Then there's going to be an extra. Then there's going to be an extra offering. Does that make a difference?
No, it doesn't make a difference, because what's happened is, if you've only got two animals and you want one to substitute another, there is no such thing. That's what we learned in tomorrow. There is no such thing.
Why would one want to substitute?
Well, whatever, you like that first animal first, and you already sanctified it.
Okay.
And you built an affection, was your pet. You got friendly with it, not friendly in the Arab sense of friendly with your goat, but like in a Jewish way, like you like the pet, you liked having it around. It wasn't your sex tool. So in that particular case, you'd say, listen, I like Betsy the cow or whatever, just like keep it as is, and I'm going to use another animal to sanctify. You can't do that. That one has to retain its sanctity, but the minute you make that statement, you need to bring another animal to work in addition to that olah offering. Okay, but as far as that's concerned, that's not the issue we're dealing with here, Kev. It's straightforward. We're dealing with the fact that there's one olah offering and one shlamim offering, and they're two animals that look similar to each other that are in a sheep pen, and a third animal wanders in. You have to then consecrate it. Okay, so we ask the owner, do you want this to be a substitute, meaning in addition, for the olah offering or the shlamim offering? And he makes a statement saying, I wanted to go for the olah offering. No, wait, shlamim offering. So Rabbi Meir says, and whatever your first statement is, that's the primary statement. That's it. Doesn't matter if you change your mind afterwards. Okay? Just follow, because we're running way behind. So that's not the words of Rav Yossi. Okay? So Rav Yossi says, if he intended to say this initially, what do you mean he intended to say this initially? Is that we ask him whether his original intent was to issue both statements or not. If he answers that he originally intended to issue both statements, we need to make a specific plan. Let me explain to you what that plan is, Kev. Is that what we do is we take the animal, we stick it somewhere else, and we wait for a blemish to develop on that animal. Then what happens is you sell the animal, you take that financial value, and you split it up into equal portions for an olah as well as a shlamim offering. So in other words, you can designate it to both, according to Rav Yossi. According to Rabbi Meir, whatever your first designation was, that's your primary designation. Okay? So that's as far as that's concerned. Now, it's if the person says, okay, so that but if he declared this is hereby designated a substitute for an olah offering, and then reconsidered and declared this is hereby a substitute for a shlamim offering, okay? In other words, he's making a different statement here. He originally intended to designate it only as a substitution for an olah offering, but later, after declaring it an olah substitute, reconsidered and declared it a shlamim substitute. So what we're saying is it's not like the first case that he intended to dedicate it to both. He started off saying, okay, it's an olah, and then he says, no, it's shlamim. So we then have to designate it to, in that case, he would agree with Rabbi Meir, okay, that if a guy changed his mind, it's considered a substitute for an olah offering only. Because once an animal is invested with all our sanctity, its sanctity cannot be retracted. It's only when we asked him what he meant by his statement at first, when he says both, that we can do both. But if he changes his mind, it doesn't take effect. So in a way, he actually is agreeing with Rabbi Meir with regard to a person that's indecisive, but not where his decision was both. Whereas Rabbi Meir says it cannot be both. Whatever your primary statement was, that's the statement. Okay. So
can I just ask you one question, Damon? Sorry, I'll be very quick. How do you do both? How do you take one animal and put it to sanctify to both, to Ole and to the?
Okay, well, that's exactly why I said on a practical level, what you do is you can't sacrifice that one animal to both. So you put it out in a separate area and you wait for it to develop a blemish where you can no longer sacrifice it. Then what you do is you sell that animal and split the proceeds to get something for an equivalent Ola and Shlamim offering. So you're technically splitting the value. On a practical level, I looked into it.
No, thank you. That's very clever. Thank you.
Pleasure. I'm not clever. The Gemara is clever. I just looked into it. Okay.
Well,
so
also good.
So in the Gemara's discussion of that Mishnah, we raised the following objection concerning it. If he reconsidered, it's obvious that his second declaration designating it as a substitute for a shlamim is ineffective. So why does Rav Yossi need to teach us this? It's obvious. And as recorded there, Rav Papa said in his answer to this question, Rav Yossi refers to where he considered and designated the animal as a substitute for a shlamim within the time required for an utterance. Rav Yossi is teaching that one cannot reconsider and alter a statement even within the time required for an utterance. Evidently, then, Rav Yossi maintains that a statement made after another statement within the time required for an utterance is not viewed as part of the same utterance. So, this is completely his opposite opinion to the case of theft and slaughter. What he's saying is here is even if you do it instantly, so say, what do you want to designate it as? And if he says at first, both at all and shlamim, we don't have a problem because he said both. Then we let it, we split the proceeds after it develops a blemish because we can't sacrifice it. In this case, he said, I want it to be an olah offering. No, shlamim offering. So there, in that case, Rabbi Yossi is agreeing with Rabbi Meir, Gavin. But what that means is that the time of an utterance where you can technically retract testimony, it's not seen as one testimony. Because if it was, we would not count the first part of the testimony separate from the second. We'd say there's no primary significance to mentioning the first statement as opposed to the second if it's within a time of an utterance, like a millisecond. In other words, all are offering, no shlamim. Boom, boom. That's one utterance. So therefore, according to what he generally holds when we learn the theft and the slaughter, if it's with one utterance, you could see him changing his mind and accept the change of mind. But we don't. We give his first statement primary consideration only. And therefore, that's the chiddush, is saying that even if it's within the time period of an utterance, Rav Yossi in this case sees it as two separate testimonies, which is contradictory to how he sees theft and slaughter. Because he said, I hereby say that the defendant stole the animal on a Sunday and slaughtered it on the Monday. That's again two statements within a time of an utterance. Therefore, it's seen as one statement, one testimony. So the Gemara wants to ask, why is there a contradiction with Rav Yossi here? Is he inconsistent or is there another reason? Do you get the question? It's very straightforward.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good. Let's go on. So, the Gemara answers, they said there are two measures of within the time required for an utterance. One is the time required for a student to greet a teacher, and one is the time required for a teacher to greet a student. So, when does Rav Yossi not hold that a statement made after another within the time required for an utterance is considered part of the same utterance? When the time required for the utterance is defined as the time required for a student to greet a teacher. In other words, the time it just takes to say, Shalom Aleichem Rabbi Umoiri. Okay? So what we are saying is here, is it says, peace unto you, my teacher, my master. It's disrespectful and forbidden to just say to their teacher, how's it? So the minute you've got a proper greeting, it's not like you can say Shalom Aleichem like you greet your friend. So therefore, it's a longer term of an utterance, but it's still a single utterance. Okay? Whereas when a teacher greets a student, he only has to say Shalom Aleichem because he doesn't have to accord the same respect. So what he's actually saying is here is that Rav Yossi's ruling in the Brisa is that the testimonies given about theft and slaughter are considered one lengthy testimony, refers to a case where the testimony to the slaughter followed the testimony to the theft within the shorter time of an utterance. In other words, the time it takes a teacher to greet a student, Shalom Aleichem, that's it. But Rav Yossi says in our Mishnah in Tamura that one cannot reconsider and change a statement within the time of an utterance because it refers to the lengthier time of an utterance. In other words, the time it takes to utter the 4 words, Shalom Aleichem Rabbi Umoiri. In other words, what he's saying is the statement itself is longer. And therefore, if the statement itself is longer, it's seen as 2 separate testaments. In this case. Yeah. So that's the reason. Anyway, that's pretty clear. Let me move on. The Gemara discusses Eidim Zomamim, witnesses whose testimony was contradicted before they were exposed as Zomamim. Okay, so I don't know. I don't know if you know what that means, but I'm going to explain it to you. Rabbi said witnesses who were first contradicted and later rendered conspiring witnesses are executed. So what do we mean here? Is if, for example, guys, you've got 2 witnesses and they testified that Reuven killed Shimon, and 2 other witnesses came and testified that Reuven did not kill Shimon. Okay? Later, a 3rd set of witnesses came and testified that the first set was actually with them elsewhere at the time they claimed to have seen the murder. So although their testimony was already rendered ineffective before they were rendered Zomamim, because the courts cannot convict somebody on the basis of contradicted testimony. When other witnesses later came and say they were elsewhere, they are treated as Zomamim and subject to the reciprocal punishment. Okay? So basically, Rashi notes that Rava must be referring to a case here where the court issued a verdict condemning the defendant to execution before the 2nd set of witnesses came and contradicted the first set. Because if the second witnesses contradicted the first witnesses before a verdict was reached, the court could not have convicted the defendant. And if he was not convicted and condemned to death on the basis of their false testimony, they can't be executed as Zomamim. For Zomamim, witnesses are punished only if the court actually renders a verdict on the basis of their false testimony. Okay, so in other words, let's just keep this matter very simple. So there's 2 different types of contradictions. The one is where Shimon says that Reuven said that he saw Shimon kill somebody. And later there were witnesses that say Shimon didn't. Okay, let's put it in an even simpler way. 2 witnesses come and say Reuven killed Shimon. Okay, and there were 2 other witnesses. All they said was that Reuven did not kill Shimon. Okay, at that place. So let's give you an example. Let's say at Santon there was a road rage incident. Okay, and Reuven, 2 witnesses claimed that Reuven killed Shimon. And 2 other witnesses on the same junction in Santon, by Santon City, said Reuven didn't kill Shimon, he just beat the heck out of him. Now they're contradicting each other, right? So we discard both their testimonies. Okay. Now, there was another set of witnesses that came and said that the first set of witnesses were not even in Santon at the time. Have you typing something?
Kevin wanted to know if I had a yarmulke on. I do have one on. Does anyone know?
Doesn't, okay.
I have one. He was concerned. Yeah, I have one there.
All right.
Sorry,
No, it's a concern. And Kev, just for the record. Hello.
Yeah. I think we should start the shirim. We should all go like this.
Yeah.
Take a bow.
Take a bow. There we
and
go.
Arthur's got his hat on. Okay. So what we're saying is here, let's just keep this simple. Okay. There's a difference between the concept of Eidim Zomimim and the concept of cancelling out a witness. So, if one set of witnesses said they saw an event and another set of witnesses said they didn't see an event, they cancel each other out. That's a different concept to Eidim Zomimim. Eidim Zomimim is a case where two witnesses want to convict this one guy of murder and say this murder occurred in Santon City, and other witnesses said that these witnesses couldn't have viewed it at Santon City because they were with them at Jovel. Now that renders these witnesses Eidim Zomimim, conspiring witnesses. So they get the reciprocal penalty of execution. But this is a different case, because what should happen is that when you've got one set of witnesses saying the murder happened in Santon, and another said that this guy didn't murder him, he beat him a bit, but he didn't murder him, they cancel each other out. If another set of witnesses come and say that that first set couldn't have witnessed the murder because they were with these other guys in Jovel, if you want to say that Hazama starts at the end of the process when the witnesses are seen to be in another location, they wouldn't get the reciprocal penalty because they were already cancelled out. In other words, Kev, do you know what I'm saying or not? I'd ask
The reciprocal, they were cancelled out. Are you saying because of the false testimony?
No. What I'm saying is Eidim Zomimim, to get the reciprocal penalty, is a specific law. And that law is the fact that you have to say that the witnesses are testifying falsely, not because you witnessed a different version of the incident or no incident at all, but they couldn't have been at that location. So if they were proved not to be at that location, they're then conspiring. It's not a misunderstanding of the facts. They're conspiring because they weren't even there, and therefore they're given the reciprocal penalty, whether it's the death penalty or monetary or whatever they try to do to this defendant. Okay? But when you've got two sets of witnesses contradicting each other, and the one said, yes, Reuven killed Shimon, and the other said, turn around and say, no, he beat him badly, but he didn't die. That's a contradiction in terms of how they saw the events. That's not Eidim Zomimim. Both witnesses then cancel each other out. Eidim Zomimim is only when the second pair of witnesses turn around and say they couldn't have even been there. They were with us in Jovel. They couldn't have seen this murder in Santon, which means they were clearly conspiring against this innocent defendant. That's the circumstance of the reciprocal penalty. Okay? And now we're saying something different. We are saying what happens if there's two sets of witnesses before a third set come up, right? The two sets of witnesses turn around, and the one said, Reuven murdered Shimon in Santon, by Santon City. And another set of witnesses says, no, Reuven didn't murder Shimon by Santon City. He beat him to a pulp, but he didn't kill him because the other guy was still moaning afterwards and just had a couple of bruises and maybe a broken bone or two, but he was moving and crawled back into his car. So, in other words, they could just be that they interpreted the events differently. That's not Eidim Zomimim, but they cancel each other out. Fine. That's one thing. Now, since they cancel each other out, they don't get the reciprocal penalty of the death penalty because even though they said they witnessed a murder, they could have been mistaken. That's not conspiracy. What's conspiracy is if you say you saw something and you weren't even there and you were caught out lying about your location. That's the definition of Adam Zommerman. You see the difference? Then and only then is the reciprocal penalty given. Okay? But we are saying here, what happens if you've got two sets of witnesses cancelling each other out? So the murder at Santon, the first witnesses said Reuven killed Shimon. The second said, no, they just beat him. Then the third set of witnesses said they couldn't have viewed Reuven killing Shimon because they were with us in Yovel. They weren't even in Santon. So we can't really apply the reciprocal death penalty because they already cancelled out each other before the third set of witnesses came by and said the witnesses accusing this defendant of murder weren't even there because they'd already cancelled each other out. That's according to the one opinion. That's according to a buyer. But according to Rava, that's not the case. According to Rava, they are executed because contradiction is the beginning of Hazama. It's merely the process has not been completed. So what he's saying is here, although their testimony was already rendered ineffective before they were rendered Zomamim, for the court, cannot convict somebody on the basis of contradicted testimony. When other witnesses later come and say they were elsewhere, they are treated as Zomamim and subject to the reciprocal punishment. So what it's saying is here, contradiction itself, according to Rabbi, is in essence very similar to Hazama, in that in both cases, the original testimony is repudiated by the later witnesses. So according to Rabbi, it does not subject the contradicted witnesses to punishment, for it's an incomplete act of repudiation in that it lacks the additional feature associated with Hazama of removing the witnesses from the scene of the alleged crime. So when other witnesses come and state that the first witnesses were elsewhere, we view the contradicting witnesses as having begun the Hazama process, and the later witnesses as completing the process begun by the contradicting witnesses. So the testimony of the original witnesses was therefore never irrelevant before the Hazama process began. So all we are saying is there's two ways to look at it. I've got 3 minutes left. The one is that one said a murder took place, and another one said a beating took place in Santon, they cancel each other out. So if there are witnesses later said they were never at Santon witnessing the murder, they were at Jovel, then that Adam Zommerman reciprocal penalty, according to a buyer, doesn't take place because if they've already contradicted each other, it was thrown out, and therefore that reciprocal penalty doesn't occur if they were invalidated. Okay? But Rava doesn't say that. He said that was just showing the start of their deception, that they were trying to prove that there was a murder when there was no murder. They heard about in the community that somebody got beaten up, and they said he died because he disappeared off the scene. Maybe he ran away to another province, and they wanted to get this other oak executed. So according to Rava, the fact that another set of witnesses comes along is actually those two sets don't cancel each other out. It just proves the inconsistency of the lying witnesses, in fact, in more than one way. And therefore, we see the Hazama at the beginning of the contradiction, and it continues until the witnesses testify that they weren't at that location. Then we give them the reciprocal death penalty. But according to a buyer, it's not like Rava, they cancel each other out. So even if they cancel each other out, they're now rendered invalidated. And if the witnesses came and say they couldn't have viewed the murder because they were with them in Yovel, not Santon, there's no reciprocal penalty because it was already, they were already invalidated. That's the difference between Rava and a buyer. I'm going to go through the whole case of how it unfolds, but that's the bottom line, guy.
Perfect, thank you.
Pleasure. Does that make sense?
Damon, if they invalidated, it's
Arthur, come in the camera.
It means they weren't. Their testimony doesn't count, so they're not going to pay the penalty. Is that what you say? That there's no reciprocal penalty.
Yes. So according to a buyer, they disqualified each other by cancelling each other out. So later witnesses were they weren't even there. They don't give them the reciprocal penalty, but Rava says that they are, because this was just the start of their lie, and they haven't cancelled each other out. That's it. Guys, have a wonderful Shabbos.
You too.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you, Damon.
Thanks,
Jeez.
Damon. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
You too.